Silly. Right, so anyway, welcome everyone. My name is Councillor Paul Boyes, leader of the council and chair of the meeting of the executive. This meeting is being held not in the council chamber, but in committee room 1, as we're updating the Zoom machine in there at the Berries in Godalming, and is being webcast live. The agenda was published on Monday the 3rd of March, and a supplementary agenda pack was published on Friday the 7th of March. Agenda item 1 is apologies. Kim, apologies for absence.
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Beacon release.
Thank you. Are there any others? Item 2, minutes of the meeting of the 11th of February 2025 published on the website. Can I have members of the executive just agree that they are content with those minutes?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Declarations, any declarations of interest, anyone? No. Item 4, questions from members of the public. There has been one question from a member of the public. That member of the public has joined us this evening. Councillor Townsend, would you like to just engage with the response to that question before I invite the member of the public to ask supplementary?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Leader. So the answer to the question was circulated before the meeting, so hopefully you've had a chance to read that, and I don't need to read it all out again in full. And I believe that you have a supplementary question.
My supplementary question is that I still feel that I haven't had a clear explanation as to why the review for the SIL requires a public inquiry when you've been provided with a legal opinion that clearly says you have all the powers necessary to revoke SIL demands for homeowners and self-builders who were entitled to an exemption.
Please do. Thank you, Ms.
I think that there's probably two things that are getting slightly conflated here.
Yeah.
One is the review we've agreed to carry out, and we are, which is in the answer here, that we will be doing a discretionary review within the window from the 1st of June. So that's to do with looking back. And then the other one is to do with the actual formal SIL charging structure, which has to go through a formal legislative process and a public consultation. So I know they're both sort of termed a review, so it is a bit confusing, but one is the formal charging structure, which has to go along the local plan, and that one has to go to examination, formal examination, and the other is our own review here.
So can I just check, just to make sure I understand that? So an individual resident's interaction with this process is something that we can review and theoretically quash or modify under our own powers, but the actual review of the policy itself has to be done under a very clear process.
Yes, I wouldn't use that language as in quash, because we haven't got, the legislation is quite strict about what we can and can't do. Okay. So, however, we are looking at, in line with the West Berkshire, we are looking at the discretionary review to look at people's own personal circumstances between the 1st of June to the 31st of May 20. So the 1st of June this year to the 31st of May 2026.
So we will make sure you get a proper written version of that. You will get a proper written version of that response that's also been commented on by our legal and our planning. So you've had the absolute chapter and verse on the issue. But I think it's just a case of separating the individual particular residents' issues with the policy review and how we deal with that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. And you also actually mentioned about a log of householders. Is that a log that you already have, or is that one that you're going to draw up?
No, well, we have a list of all householders that have been charged SIL.
Yeah.
Okay. But in my case, you wouldn't know that I was a householder because we never got the opportunity to declare what we were.
Okay, so I can't go into your case here now in this meeting, but please, email me and I can speak to Claire about any specifics to do with your own individual case.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Grant. Right, then 1 second. So that can't agenda. In which case we go on then to item 5, questions from members. There are no questions from members. Leader of portfolio holders updates. I'm actually going to go last because I have to say I've spoken more about local government reorganisation than I care to count, and I'm going to leave it at least an extra couple of minutes. Oh yeah, and I will say, Mr. Daly and Mrs. Grant, if you don't want to stay for the entire rest of a 15-item agenda, you are of course not obligated to. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you very much.
Don't need to be squatted down.
No, it's fine. They're fine getting down now. It's fine. Yeah. Mr. Daly knows the way, I think. Right. Okay. In which case we then go to item 6. I will just go round in order, starting with Tony.
No updates.
Okay, Liz.
Well, I did send a bit of an email around earlier. So today Angela Rayner introduced the Planning and Infrastructure Bill. And so this is aiming to accelerate house building and also delivery of critical infrastructure, which is a very positive thing. There are some points in it which, you know, may cause some issues. I know the Local Government Association has broadly welcomed the changes, but has got some concerns about it sort of taking power more into sort of like more from a local level, so local decision making. There will be some impacts. It may not impact our planning committee as much because we have gone through changes and we've made those changes already, but it may affect the scheme of delegation to which types of applications will go before our planning committee. It does allow us to set our own planning fees, which will be a positive thing. I'm not sure when that will come in because, you know, there's a way to go yet. There's a nature restoration fund. I know that some environmental lists are a bit concerned about how that's going to pan out, and also some compulsory purchase enhanced powers to acquire land for projects for public good. So, and there's a few other ones on renewable energy and accelerating that, as well as national significant infrastructure projects. So all in all, it is quite positive, and but equally, I haven't read all the nitty-gritty at all to find out. The devil will be in the detail. But at the moment, as you probably know, you know, our own housing targets have increased quite a bit, and although we're seeing a slight increase in planning applications, that has been after a lull in house building that we've experienced. So we're still very much facing a tilted balance.
And was there anything in it to address unbuilt consents? No. Nothing.
Not that I know of.
Which is of course quite disappointing. It will be nice to know if we can in fact finally charge a recovery rate at least for processing planning applications. That is indeed very welcome change. Let's hope it's implemented soon.
They are looking at development corporations, which we were talking about earlier.
Yes.
And also strategic planning is coming back into fashion again. Ooh.
Yes, I mean, development corporations on the first instance make me think we're going to struggle with recruitment and have retention issues for an additional reason than we have now.
Indeed,
which of course
it's going to be interesting.
With that, but yes, indeed. So we'll see how that goes. And when do we'll obviously see some more detail about when these things actually become live.
I've got no idea. Ezra might know. I mean, so
it was introduced today into Parliament.
Yeah,
it'll go through the parliamentary process. We'll produce an officer briefing, executive and for all members and parishes too. And we'll do, as we've done other planning changes, kind of full briefings on that, so we can all understand, including the planning committee too. There'll be some which is done through primary legislation. There'll be some which is done through regs as well, and we'll unpick what's what.
Okay, right. So we'll look forward to that, and I'm sure the planning committee will look forward to it even more. Mark.
Thanks, Paul. Right, so hot off the heels of the sign off of our clean 2023-24 audited accounts, which I may have mentioned before. I'm pleased to report that we are in the first tranche, the first cohort of local authorities undergoing external audits for 2024-25, and in fact the work has already started. None of this would be possible without our outstanding finance team, and so I'm very pleased to welcome, whatever the word is, Jo Knight, who is our new Joint Assistant Director of Finance, and I think many of you already know Jo, who's already been doing an astonishing job as the Interim Assistant Director of Finance at Guildford Borough Council already. So welcome, Jo. You're very welcome.
Thank you.
It's a natural step for my role within Guildford is to look at how we share services and how we work better together.
Absolutely.
So I'm really looking forward
and welcome,
to it.
Jo. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Good.
Okay, in which case, Victoria.
Nothing. Okay, thank you.
Janet. I'm bouncing across if anybody.
Well, I
can
see,
imagine.
For me.
Paul.
Yes, I've got some, well, we heard this morning, didn't we, in briefing that as of today, we have been informed of the results of the of our bid to the Warm Homes Social Housing Fund Wave 3 Energy Efficiency Scheme. You have to write these things down slowly. And we have been offered a provisional allocation of £2,097,557 pounds, no pence, by the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero. The scheme, sadly, was oversubscribed by 2 billion, and so there is a scaling back. So we're not quite sure exactly how much we're actually going to get, but a large fraction of what I just said. This program provides grants to social housing providers to help them improve their homes to energy performance certificate band C. Now, we as a council have already committed £3 million of funds to this project over the next 3 years. And this will be used to upgrade some of our, I don't really want to say worst performing houses, but those that need it most urgently through a fabric first approach. The energy efficiency upgrade measures will help to make houses warmer, reduce carbon emissions and tackle fuel poverty by installing insulation, low carbon heating systems and solar PV panels, which will save households money on their energy bills. And what we're doing already is starting to save up to £400 per annum on our tenants' bills on those that have been upgraded. So that's all good news.
Fantastic news. And I think the other thing, just to also add, I've answered some questions about this over the course of the day. When most councils got somewhere between 30 and 50% of what they asked for, we got something like 70% of what we asked for. And I think that shows very much that both the housing team and the climate change team's experience in actually writing and putting in those bids is literally paying off for residents of Waverley. And I do want to thank them all for the work that they've done. This is something that is literally saving people money every month on their energy bills. And I can't stress how very valuable that is, as well as making sure that we are making as big a dent as we reasonably can without somebody giving us, you know, £180 million plus to make a bigger dent. So
which would be nice as well.
Which would obviously be nice if anybody's listening to this, but we will take what we can get as much as we can get it. Thank you, Paul.
Just before I finish, Leader, did we at this August event talk about our C2 awards? Did we do
I
it?
don't think we've done that proper justice.
Well, I won't do it proper justice. I'll do it. Some days ago, we had a regulatory judgment which was published, and this council received a C2 grading. Now, C stands for consumer and not as an A, B, C. And the top mark, if you like, is a C1. So we are just a bit below that level. And it is terrific that while this bidding was going on, we just mentioned, we were also working very closely with the regulator of social housing on helping them realise that we were pretty good with our houses. It wasn't a straightforward thing. It took an awful lot of work, and great that we're at the C2 level. What it means is that we have a plan that they have agreed, and they will come in and check that we're following that plan every month until we tick it off, which shouldn't be all that long. So great news for our housing department and for our financial team as well, making sure that we stick to our budgets. So that's good.
I feel like I need to add, because sometimes people neglect to remember that collaboration works both ways. This has been an opportunity where, yes, our housing team have done a fantastic job, and they really, really have, as have our finance team, in making this happen in this way. But we also probably couldn't have got to where we got to without help from the Guildford Borough Council housing team and their compliance side, particularly in making sure that we got this done. So there are a number of people who forget that collaboration does work both ways, and we benefited significantly from our relationship with Guildford Borough Council in that endeavour. So I want to thank them and their portfolio holder, who's the leader of the council over there, for that support. Okay, moving then to Steve.
Yeah, and again, following on from Paul, I mean, I just would like really to add my congratulations to the housing team and the sustainability team for their huge work in terms of, and huge success in terms of this bid. I mean, as I've often said before, I don't really like the bidding culture, and you know, as as has just been suggested, we need 180 million really to be able to actually get to our target. But it's really quite a remarkable achievement that we've got just over 2 million roughly for for this kind of work. We were successful last year. We're even more successful this year, and
Very
that's
good
great.
start.
So just really want to add my thanks to that. But I just also wanted to add that I was very pleased today to be, despite the weather, outside the Royal Courts of Justice again this morning, representing Waverley Borough Council, supporting Charlie Maynard, MP for Witney, who has been challenging the public bailout of Thames Water and calling for bringing the water industry back into public ownership in line with Waverley Borough Council's policy motion that we passed in January and our letter to Environment Secretary Steve Reed. I was really proud to be sitting alongside councillors from up and down the country as a member of the Thames Water Emergency Board, comprising the people who really do represent the consumers, representatives of councils, trade unions and environmental organisations. And as a member of that emergency board, we will continue to meet and hold Thames Water to account over the coming period. And I'd like to put on record really my thanks to the national organisations, We Own It and Compass, for organising the event today. And really I want to be able to say how proud I am to be a member of this council, recognised nationally for standing up, for protecting our environment, safeguarding our public health and ensuring that our water system, trying to ensure that our water system serves the public good and not private profits.
Actually, a few of us attended hosted, in fact, a session over the weekend on water quality. Liz spoke at it, and also water rangers. Every single time we're presented with some of the facts about our water management in this country, I am staggered by the problems and the serious issues that continue to clearly manifest. And going back to some of the discussion we're having about SIL over the course of this week, the fact that SIL doesn't allow money to be given to, probably quite correctly, doesn't allow money to be given to a private company like that. There is a reason, I think, why infrastructure is the way it is in this country. And also, just finally, as much as I think most of us here are against the bidding culture, I think I'm quite thankful that at least our council staff here seem to be pretty good at it, at least. So it does tend to do quite well for us. Right, and last but not least, other than me in a moment, Gemma.
Lovely.
Thank you, Gemma. So the only other update from me is just to clarify, both for exec and anybody else watching this, that the sort of framing paper, which doesn't say a great deal other than the boilerplate, has been released regarding LGR. We're expecting two other elements, one of which is what we're calling Part A, which should be the common ground between the districts and boroughs in the county in terms of supporting material for LGR. I think it's fair to say, and Pedro, please do correct me if I'm wrong, common ground has been slightly harder to achieve than we might have thought, and we hope to have reached that common ground in the next 24 to 36 hours, we hope. There will likely be, unless something radical changes between now and Friday, there will likely be a Part B bid from the county and a Part B bid from the district and boroughs, the broad thrust of which is that the county bid is pushing for 2 unitaries and the district and borough bid is pushing for 3. There will be a briefing for Guildford and Waverley Borough councillors on Wednesday at 7, and we will do our best, Pedro, Julia and I, to brief members on one of the largest changes to local government in the history of this country, with evidence that's had to be compiled over the course of basically a month. So is there anything you wanted to add on that, Pedro? Because you've been at the business end of this as much as anybody.
I was going to say a month is slightly overplaying it.
It possibly is, isn't
it? We didn't really have the questions until kind of relatively into the middle of February, and then there was quite a lot of negotiation that had to be done throughout all of that. So as well as building the evidence case, we've had to try and do that in a way that enables us to take 11 boroughs and districts together with that, which I think Paul and I were both reflecting is a lot of a heavier job than we thought it would be. I've just spotted that Surrey have sent around something extremely unhelpful, but you know, we'll deal with each of those things.
I think it's fair to say bringing 12 lots of leaders and 12 lots of officers has presented some challenges. Some of those challenges have had to have been dealt with personally by Pedro and by me in our respective hats. Without going into too much of the detail, I want to thank Waverley and Guildford officers who have, shall we say, taken a very significant role in getting us to anywhere close to where we need to be with this. I think there has been some very positive benefits to Guildford and Waverley for us stepping up into, from the officer side, from the 151 side, from the monitoring officer side, from comms, and even from the political side. There has been a significant contribution from both Waverley and Guildford to get us anywhere close to the right place on this.
And I will just, I want to echo that, and I will just add that I have genuinely been blown away by, you know, it has been incredibly annoying at various points, but like, but our colleagues in boroughs and districts have, by and large, at least at the officer level, have all comment on the political level, but at officer level, by and large, people have tried to work together, tried to be helpful, tried to, you know, expressed their concerns, even when those concerns were, you know, 3 days after it would have been helpful to express those concerns. But like, but you know, we've tried to get through this together in a way that is constructive and positive, and I think we are on course to getting to something, you know, positive and reasonable on Friday. And I will just say that regardless of where this goes, I think what's been incredibly helpful about the situation so far is it's given us a much better evidence base, such that wherever we get to with government, we can hopefully help to steer Surrey in the most positive direction possible within those scenarios. And I will just say, I should thank Paul for his patience in all of this, because I have been phoning him at like, you know, I don't know, 11:30 p.m. on a Saturday, and finding, you know, to ask for a political intervention on X or what have you, and you know, whatever his actual physical circumstances at the time, Paul has generally picked up the phone, and I think that is admirable, and I'm very grateful.
Oh, and likewise, Pedro has had to intervene with at least 11 other chief executives, including the county chief executive, as well as doing, for example, things like today, corralling the 151s of Surrey to meet the request of the leaders group today. So it has, as I said, from both the officer side and the political side, Waverley and Guildford has, shall we say, had to shoulder some of the burden of getting Surrey into the right place. But I think ultimately we've agreed between us that that is beneficial for us here in the long run, to try and get to some sensible solution for our part of Surrey, whatever that might be. And that's absolutely all I'm going to say on the subject. I think both you and I are fundamentally sick to the back teeth of the subject, frankly, at this point. Right, in which case, recommendations from review and scrutiny. There have been no meetings of either of the ONSs before the last meeting. One thing I did want to just add into the equation, I had a number of comments from members here and also members across different councils in Surrey, including the county, that there has been, because of the way the papers have to come forward on LGR, there hasn't in fact been or will not be any formal scrutiny of those documents. That is something that I'm sure members will need to reflect upon in those meetings, but I can assure you that had we been able to do this in the way that some of us have wanted, i.e. not having to do this in a month flat, this is not how some of us who support local government reorganisation would have wanted to have done this. And as somebody who voted against doing it in this overly fast way, I will ask any opposition members who wish to critique the lack of scrutiny to reflect on their own vote, not to sign a letter, taking the slightly longer, more thoughtful approach to this. We are doing this fast because their colleagues at the county insisted that we do so, put a letter to the government requesting it be that way. So I'm sure we'll all reflect on that when we get to the actual meeting next week. In which case, I'll now move to financial monitoring 24-25 Q3, which is with Mark and I imagine Candace too. Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Yeah, scrutiny, let alone consultation. I'm a huge fan.
Oh, let's not even get to that.
Yeah, I believe in local government reorganisation. This process is giving it a bad name.
Yes, I agree completely.
But anyway, let me talk about what I'm supposed to be talking about. So the report's on page 19 of your main agenda pack, and that summarises the forecast outturn for general fund revenue, the HRA and capital for the 24-25 financial year, which is going to end in a couple of weeks' time. But it's a snapshot as at the end of the third quarter, 31st December 2024. So you'll be thrilled to know I'm not going to read out the entire list of numbers and detailed analysis, which is in the report. But I'm just going to summarise that while we are in some cases significantly up on our budgets, there are some important caveats and some common themes. So in the general fund revenue side, higher than expected interest rates nationally have meant a very welcome surplus in investment income. And the failings in the labour market have been, we've not been able to hire the skilled people that we need, and we've saved money there. But neither of these situations are sustainable, and little comfort can be drawn from them. On the negative side, pressures are also dominated by income rather than costs, and include underachievement of income in key areas such as building control, planning fee income, and Waverley training services, all of which we addressed as part of the balanced 25-26 budget that we passed a couple of weeks ago. The report contains 3 general fund revenue supplementary requests for the rent and waste matters that it identifies and explains, plus a veerment of £250,000 from that additional investment income to cover additional costs for procurement support from our partners at Guildford due to the very significant changes in regulation and to relieve the procurement backlog that's been building. For general fund capital, almost all of the reported savings are due, in fact, to timing differences where projected capital spends in this year, 24-25, will roll over into 25-26. Likewise, for the HRA, on the operational side, the lion's share of the savings are, in fact, again, timing differences where projected IT spends especially will roll over into 25-26. And similarly, capital spends on the half dozen or so new build work streams will also roll over into next year too. And the report also contains 1 HRA supplementary request for additional funds due to the identification of more works than we expected for electrical installation condition report inspections of our homes. So I commend the report and recommendations to this group, the executive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And speaking as somebody who's had to recently engage at relatively short notice with some of the budget material from half a dozen other councils around the county, this is probably the clearest reporting I have yet seen in local government for finance, to the point that a non-accountant like me can actually engage with this and have some hope of understanding what on earth it's saying. So I honestly, the improvement in the way that this is reported, not just the structure of it, but just the presentation of it is just such an improvement on what we've had over the sort of past 5 years in particular. Are there any other comments on this? Otherwise, I'll move to recommendations.
I have one small comment, and I did raise it with Candice. It's an observation, and you've actually touched upon it, Mark, which is the issue of recruitment and vacancies, and a market that is difficult to improve. And presumably, moving forward, that is going to get yet more difficult because people will be looking at us thinking it's not the most secure environment with all that's going on in local government reform as well. So I'm assuming, Mark, that picture is not going to get better, shall we say, in the near future.
Well, listen, I don't want to be, Mr. Misery, but it's kind of common sense. The point is that we have always had efficiency savings. We budgeted for efficiency savings because we know how hard it is to hire people. A couple of years ago, we had an interim bubble where we had interim staff, particularly in planning, because there simply weren't a skilled planning staff out there to hire at any price, let alone the salaries that we are forced to work with. If you can't offer rates that compete with the private sector, you have to offer other terms and conditions that make up for them, whether it's flexible working, whether it's pension. It doesn't matter what it is, you have to be able to offer something, otherwise people just won't even apply for the jobs, let alone interview. And I can't see how the insecurity of a reorganization process helps in any way.
Yeah, the additional uncertainty, it's not going to make any areas such as, for example, planning that was already under significant stress. But there are a few areas where this is going to obviously increase uncertainty. I mean, I think the thing I would just reflect on is on the general LGR point I've said a few times, there is no unitary, whether it be West Surrey or Southwest Surrey, that does not include Guildford and Waverley. And therefore, it is entirely reasonable for us to continue forward in the collaboration that we have previously articulated. And I think it's worth saying, and Pedro obviously is the officer responsible in terms of paying conditions and in that side of things, we intend to try and do as much as possible to make staff feel as secure as possible through this transition. We are making sure, and certainly Pedro, you had, by the way, didn't you, I think last week, we are trying to update staff as much as we reasonably can on this, but it's a fairly evolving picture.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. So I've been using, by the way, for the last month, to update each and every week on what's going on, even if the update is nothing's changed.
Yeah.
It's reassuring, I think, and maybe other officers can comment, that we're being clear about what we can say at every point, and staff are free to ask and frequently do about kind of what the latest position is. For this week, we have, by the way, tomorrow, where I'll update again. I'm also telling people we've put a special, by the way, meeting in for Monday, at which point we can brief staff on what was published on Friday, because I think that's important. We've got comms that is going to tune out, because we're going to put out a press release on Friday alongside, on behalf of Ds and Bs, alongside whatever the proposition is agreed on Friday. We wanted to have a similar comms going internally for staff to just kind of reassure people and also remind them that we've got a special session on Monday whereby any questions can be kind of dealt with. However, there is a limit to what we can deal with. We're going to try and get FAQ questions kind of done as much as possible, but we just can't answer questions like what's going to happen to my job, or how many redundancies are there going to be, or when, because we don't know what government's going to agree to. We don't really know what the timetable is. We don't know which groups we're going to go into, and all of that is material for working out what happens next. So all we can really do is say what we know, which is relatively small, say what we're arguing for, which we can say a little bit more, and say what the process is that's coming up, and that's the important thing. We can also talk about how unitarizations have happened previously, where, for example, people have gone into stuff like recruitment freezes and so on, but I'm just not sure that's a healthy thing to say at this point in time, because then the question is when and how would that work? And the answer is don't know, and also don't know.
And we should obviously not take the county's modelling as gospel, because otherwise we'd have hundreds and hundreds of new staff by looking at their way they're working this out. But Mark.
Yeah, I'd actually just build on that a little bit, because we have learned lessons, regardless of what some people might think, from our collaboration with Guildford.
Yeah,
and we know that whatever happens, we will still need planning services. We will still need to do we still need someone to do the stuff that we're doing, and particularly in our corner of Surrey, we have a lot more in common with Guildford. Dare I say, Woking, we have an HRA. Not everybody has an HRA. So, those things are actually, I think, and I know that I'm going to regret saying this, causes for optimism, because, you know, stuff still needs to be done. And even when you throw everybody together, there still will not be enough people around to do the stuff that needs to be done. That's just obvious as the day is long to me.
Yeah, absolutely, very fair. Any further comments on the financial monitoring? No, in which case then can I ask everybody to refer to the recommendations as set out in the report agenda item 8, and are they agreed, everyone? All those in favour, please shout. Agreed. Thank you very much, everyone. Right, an item that I have been looking forward to coming to the agenda executive for some time, as it achieves one of our major planks of many of our manifestos in this room, which is with Williams, and is the grounds maintenance contract.
Yep, and I'm absolutely delighted to bring the paper to the executive, and I'd like to thank our officers for all the enormous amount of work that has actually gone into this. So really, as long as I've been a Waverley councillor, the ground maintenance service has been delivered by an external provider, and as a result, any changes to provision, such as those dictated by our biodiversity strategy, our decarbonisation policy, our pesticides policy and action plan, for example, need to be implemented by a third party via a variation in our contract. And moreover, the changes to the regime of grounds maintenance that are likely to result from our policy of land transfer to the parish and town councils would be made much, much more difficult if we are operating through contract management rather than direct control. So combine this with the great opportunities for sharing resources and expertise through our working in partnership with Guildford Borough Council's in-house team. It's clearly the right course, I think, to bring our grounds maintenance service in-house, and having resolved last year to seek a temporary extension of our grounds maintenance contract for one further year to give us the right time to be able to bring the service in-house. We're now in a position, as a result of the hard work of our officer team in doing the groundwork, for want of a better word, to agree to bring our grounds maintenance work in-house from this autumn. So I'd urge support for the paper that's before us.
My apologies, Steve, I was just confirming our authority to pass a couple of the elements there, but as they've been outlined in the budget already, it's my understanding that we are able to authorise them as exempt rather than being recommendations. And that's helpful. Right. Just confirming. Absolutely. Any other speakers on this? I've certainly got a couple of comments as well. Liz.
Yeah, I mean, I'd just like to say that, you know, this is very welcome to come before us. I think that there's probably no one around this table that hasn't had residents contacting them about grounds maintenance, and also we also have the history of Surrey County Council, and they're taking over the verges to see, you know, how it works when it is contracted out. And I know that our contractors have worked really hard, but having local knowledge, having a local team, being able to be agile, to be able to send people to places where there is an urgent problem, I think will be invaluable and will provide a much better service for residents. So I very much welcome this, and I do hope that you know, that we will definitely see you know, less inquiries from residents eventually, because that will, you know, will show that this is working. And also, you know, our staff take a huge pride, you know, our green spaces staff themselves take a huge pride in our green spaces and do look after them fantastically. I mean, I'm, you know, in Cranley, our common is amazing. It's beautiful. They keep it really well. they're very good about cutting it before we have things like carnivals or local events. And, you know, and having that agility to be able to be looking at the weather and being able to send a team in is very much appreciated. So I'd like to thank Marcus and the team for putting this together, and, you know, very much look forward to this coming about.
Yeah, I'll take that. Thanks to Marcus and the team, and also Steve for shepherding this through. The other thing as well is there's a few Godalming Town councillors around this table, as you can imagine, and one of the things that all of us find, particularly where we're covering gaps for Surrey, where we've expanded our grounds maintenance team, the ability to flexibly intervene in those sorts of things. Because of course, I mean, I obviously can't talk about this without vaguely reflecting on LGR, because again, there is a link. Most residents neither know or care whether something is a town or parish, the borough council or the county council. They just want it done. And by doing this, we increase the capacity to just get stuff done in a way that we just don't have before. I have zero faith in much of the county's provision in terms of green spaces, and where we've got active towns and parishes in Waverley and a borough council that has its own teams to deal with this, I have far more confidence that residents will see actual activity on the ground rather than somebody just arguing it's a different authority, and that may be enough, and it never is. Any other comments, anyone? Simply want to be a recommendation to council rather than a right, fine. Okay, so I will be amending item one of the recommendations on the agenda. Bear with me 1 second while I just get my ducks in a row on this. So just to be clear, and I will just need to ask you to second, Tony, so that I've got an amendment passed. The supplementary estimate of 1 million to purchase vehicles and equipment required as detailed in paragraph 12.2 to be funded from capital receipts, which is item B on the recommendations, will need to be a recommendation to council rather than the executive is recommended to authorise. Okay, so that will have to come back to the next council in order to do that. Okay, that's fine, but it's got to be, that's how it has to be. In which case, if there are no final comments, I will move to the recommendations as amended. In which case, the executive is recommended to authorise recommendations A and C, and the executive is recommended to council the amended item B. Can I have all those in favour, please show? Thank you very much indeed, everyone. Okay, moving on to item 10, the consideration of the establishment of a Waverley Borough Council Executive and Shareholder Committee. As many of you will know, and have had to been sitting through meetings for a number of years, Waverley Borough Council already has a number of trusts of which it maintains some level of accountability and responsibility for in different ways. And sometimes the council itself is a trustee, and sometimes the executive is the trustee body. We have the UWP bequest, for example, right now, and the Shottermill Trust, which operate in that way. We also potentially very soon have our Band H scheme, which will be a charitable contribution scheme and therefore needs to be compliant with those regulations. Our monitoring officer has quite properly and sensibly made some proposals in order to make sure that we manage those subsidiary entities better and make sure that they're compliant, particularly if we're doing more of them. I think we're also making sure that we're learning from some of the errors that have been conducted by other districts and boroughs throughout the county in terms of things such as property vehicles and other corporate subsidiaries of borough councils, which have got borough councils and district councils into a lot of issues over the last few years. So this is making sure we have a belt and braces approach to that. The proposals that are before you have been through the Joint Governance Committee. Myself and Councillor Long were present at that and spoke. They were, of course, broadly supported. And of course, this is an executive discussion because it is, in fact, an executive function that we're dealing with here rather than a council one. So at that point, I'll hand it back to all of you to add any additional comments. Victoria.
Can I just add that the recommendations note that we will be recommending to the Standards and General Purposes Committee support, and then it goes to council to agree the constitutional
It will go back
changes.
through. Yeah. So we wouldn't normally come back to exec on any of these. It would go straight to standards and then it would go to council. But because in fact, in most cases, and certainly in this case, the executive would be the trustee body, would be the body dealing, the committee established effectively to do this. That's why it's come back here. So are there any other comments on this? Otherwise, I'll move to the recommendations. In which case, are the recommendations set out in the report agenda item 10 agreed? Can I have all those in favour, please show? Thank you all. In which case, then I'll move to item 11, new affordable housing delivery Godalming, which is with Janet.
Yes. Thank you very much. So this report seeks approval for a supplementary pre-development budget to cover the costs associated with bringing forward new affordable housing at 69 High Street, Godalming. As I'm sure you all know, the HRA pre-development budget funds pre-development costs, for example, commissioning of surveys and reports. But due to spend and commitments already made to bring forward other affordable housing projects, there is insufficient budget, and therefore a supplementary budget request is being made from £99,985. And I hope it approves the recommendation to allocate this amount.
Thanks, Janet. Any comments, anyone? Mark?
Just to say, I'm really pleased to see this coming forward. For me, the housing delivery was always the more important side of the 69 High Street project, and it was many years why we did it, and it's really nice to see that starting to get going.
Absolutely, and I enjoy it. Don't worry, it's all good. I think this is the next step before we see an actual planning application on the subject. We're going to do this stage first, Liz.
Yeah, I just have to echo Mark's words about really looking forward to this housing being developed. You know, it's being developed in the centre of town. We rarely get brownfield sites that we can actually meaningfully develop. So it's really good to see that in the centre of Godalming. You know, we only built the site because of the opportunities for affordable housing, and you know, and I'm really pleased to see it coming forward so quickly.
That's nice. Victoria.
I just want to echo everything that everyone else has said. It's fantastic to see that this is coming forward, and you know, much needed affordable housing in the centre of our town. So well done to the team, and we look forward to seeing the plans.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's probably one of the more sustainable locations in town, and certainly the sorts of, you know, joint delivery of a commercial unit on a high street that needs more commercial units, whilst also delivering the sort of housing that the town needs, as opposed to 5-bedroom houses on the periphery of the town.
Yeah.
Any other speakers? No, in which case I'll bring the recommendations to 4. So the recommendation set out in the report at agenda item 11 agreed. Can I have all those in favour? Please show. Thank you very much indeed. Item 12, approval to enter into a contract with Leaseholder insurance provider, which I believe was with Paul Rivers.
Or
is
Mark.
it Mark?
I think it's a fairly simple issue. We are required to provide insurance through statute, something that we can't and shouldn't get out of. The provision of this insurance is a bit of a niche area. Am I right, Mark? And there's not
Yes,
too many,
yes.
and there's not too many people around to do it.
We are picking between a huge squad of individuals here, are we? The market is fairly narrow.
Yes, yes. And it would be really good if the executive approved it.
There are almost, I think, no other options, I think it's fair to say.
It's something we've got to do, and you know, we don't have a tremendous, you know, the market isn't packed full of people throwing themselves at us to do it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you have a recommendation effectively to approve a requirement that we have for the one or so providers that actually do this. So I'm going to have all those in favour of the recommendations, please show. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, item 13 has been withdrawn. Item 14, the lease renewal M&S 92 to 100 West Wickham, which has been an old chestnut for some of us here, although a relatively lucrative old chestnut.
Very
So
good chestnut.
after you, Mark.
Listen, the report's on page 19 of your agenda supplement pack, if you haven't found it already.
It's an M&S chestnut.
And
Sorry.
it's not. Gotta follow that now. Right. But just it does contain exempt appendices, this report, which can only be discussed in private session. But for the absolute avoidance of doubt, the open part of the report does contain a number, £200,000, and as does the report. That is a financial threshold that sets the government pathway for this decision, and should not be confused with the value of the rental income receivable under the contract. I want to stop that before it starts, if just in case. So we aspire to be a responsible landlord. And this is a first-rate property, and Marks and Spencer are an outstanding tenant. So I'm delighted that, as we expected, they want to renew this lease for an extended term of 14 years at market rent, independently verified by our qualified external professional advisors. And that current market rent reflects increased annual income and has the provision for growth over the lease term. So I'm very happy to propose this for approval. Thank you.
It just reflects our limited but thoughtful intervention in this sort of market rather than some of the things that we've seen elsewhere in the county.
I'm reluctant. We inherited a situation where this was the status quo. We needed to change path. This was something that we did while we were changing path. I'm much more comfortable with where we are now in terms of collaboration. It's where we should have been when we took over. Thankfully, we took this decision at our predecessors. We sorted this, we fixed Wakefield East, and we're on a much better trajectory.
Absolutely. Liz?
And can I just point out, obviously, that, there may be lots of people that are watching this now, Mark, that perhaps it might be a good opportunity for you just to explain that, because some people will be wondering why we have got Marks and Spencer's that is not in the borough, and that at the time how hard we did look to try and invest within the borough and thereby and the detractors that we faced.
The most astonishing thing when this opportunity came up was that we actually looked around Waverley to see who owned the Marks and Spencers in Waverley, and it seemed to be every other local authority except us.
Yeah.
And then we looked at some of the other commercial properties. We've got trading estates owned by the Wirral. We've got all sorts of things in the borough. But I just want to come back to where I said that there were very, very, very mixed emotions that went into this acquisition, which from my point of view also influenced the amount of due diligence that we went into. We had to be absolutely rock solid that we were doing something reluctantly. We were even more careful to do it properly, and I'm very glad it's paid off. I'm very glad that Wakefield East, we've managed to fix that the way that we would have wanted to do it, and so it's an astonishing situation that local authorities around the country find themselves in, and I think that we have done as best as we possibly could have wanted under the circumstances.
Absolutely. Any other comments, anyone, before I move to the recommendations? In which case, can I ask for a show of hands for support for recommendations under 3.1? Thank you all. And I think then, as we don't need to exclude press and public for any reason, I can close the meeting at 19:54. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.